I'm Mike Cole, the MPP for Eglinton Lawrence and the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Labour, Kevin Flynn. I just want to welcome you all here on this historic day for workers in Ontario. And just before I introduce Kevin, I want to thank the members of the Standing Committee who've been working at this for 6 months. They traveled across the province, city by city, in an unprecedented way, did a lot of the slugging, heard a lot of abuse, but heard a lot of good things from so many good people who also made deputations. I want to thank them for coming and telling their stories. That really helped. And I guess my favorite story was the owner of a franchise. And I remember he came and said, yeah, I'm here, I'm a small businessman, I can't afford to pay people, times are tough. So I asked him, I said, well, how many franchises do you own? Well, he said 10 or 12? 11? And I said, how much does each cost? Well, $1 million, $1.5 million. So, you know, there's the other side. Are these small business people, really? When you own 11 of these franchises? But, you know, the good thing is we listened to everybody, and we heard both sides. The bottom line is, our Minister, Kevin, said, this is about catching up to make sure that people who want to work are sacrificing, raising families, doing all the right things, and they can't afford at the end of the week or the month to pay the rent or put food on the table because they're only getting paid 11, 12 bucks an hour. And it's about, what Kevin will tell you, it's about finally taking one step towards dealing with income inequality, the growing gap between the working poor and those that are doing very well. And all we're saying is give the working poor a chance at some dignity and some fair, decent living wage. And throughout this, Kevin, you know, held his ground. You know, there's been an onslaught of attacks from, you know, you name corporate Canada, corporate Ontario was just nonstop in their assault on this legislation, which is very disappointing. And I know Kevin didn't back down. He said, no, we're doing it. And so it is not an easy thing to take on this, you know, mega international corporations that said the world was going to end. But Kevin said, no, we're doing the right thing, and we are going to not only give people a minimum wage. You know, at one point I told Kevin, this is a great strategy. It's basically a diversion strategy that he developed. He got everybody talking about the minimum wage, and nobody talked about the historical changes in workplace protections under the ESA and the Labour Relations Act. So I said that was a good way of doing it. Get everybody talking about. Meanwhile, through the back door, not the back door, but anyways, we've got significant protections for the, you know, updating the Labour Relations Act in 20 years. And then the ESA updates, as you know, the non-unionized workers, Kevin has told me, they rely on the ESA for their protection. Without those protections in the ESA, they're not going to be able to have their rights respected when they work hard. So I just want to ensure that we all appreciate Kevin and his staff behind the scenes. They were there day in, day out for the last 6 months to get this thing through. And it's really, you know, it takes a tough, hard-nosed Irishman, Canadian from Oakville to get this thing through. Yeah. Kevin Flynn.
Thank you. It is a real pleasure to be here. I notice everybody's standing to the left, and I know that may be a little symbolic, but for those of you on the right, there's a lot of room on the left still. It really is. It really is one of those days where sometimes you get caught up in the bills and the legislation and all the other things that accompany when you've got a change this big, when you've got a change as big as 148 that's going to make such a difference to so many families in this province, and you forget about the historical impact of this. This is a huge day. This is a huge day for Ontario. This is a huge day for those people that I think thought that maybe this type of day would never come back. That the concessions that were being given to people who were talking about, well, Kevin, the economic recovery is kind of fragile. Maybe you shouldn't do anything about it. Maybe this isn't the right time. We realize that this is exactly the right time because there's people in the province of Ontario, people move to Ontario. Right? People move, and if we went around the room and we asked who was born here, there'd be a show of hands whose parents were born here. You get down to grandparents and great-grandparents. Most of us, except for our Indigenous people, came from somewhere else somehow. And we didn't land here accidentally. We came here because this was a land of opportunity, where if you worked hard, you put in 35, 40 hours a week, you were able to not just get by, you were able to prosper. And when you look at the economic recovery in the province of Ontario since the recession in 2008, 2009, you look at the way we've positioned ourselves where we're leading the G7 in economic growth. Unemployment rates, as low as we've seen in at least 2 years in at least 10 years, I think now it is, and beyond. And yet there's some people that are still struggling to pay their rent. And what I learned from this was it would be around now, November 20th, November 21st, be the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of the month. Every single month, there'd be families in this province would be making a decision. Do I tell the landlord I don't have the rent money? Do I not buy food? I know my kid's size 3 shoes, but he's wearing a size 2. Those simple decisions that a lot of us take for granted, these folks just didn't have the opportunity to do that. And that is just wrong. That is not what this province is about, and it shouldn't be what this province is about because we can do better. We just proved that today. We talked to the business community, we've talked to poverty advocates, we've talked to organized labor, and what people are missing in this so far, I think, maybe it's starting to sink in, is that if you're earning at that level of income and you're buying just the basics, you're spending your paycheck the same day you get it. You're spending that paycheck within 2 or 3 days of getting it. It's going right back into the economy, right back into some of the businesses that were complaining about us doing this in the first time. But surely I think Ontario can be an example to the rest of the world that treating people with respect and dignity is not exclusive of running good, profitable companies. We can have both in the province of Ontario. I think we're going to be the jurisdiction that's going to prove that. Now, I got asked in the scrum on the way out, they said, well, were you kind of disappointed or surprised that you didn't get unanimous support in the House? Very disappointed. Surprised? Not really. I think I knew it was coming. But certainly I don't know how you stand up or you don't stand up or you don't even show up for a bill like this that is so important to the future of this province and to so many people in this province. To disagree with it, I get that, I don't agree with that, but to not be here, to not stand up and be counted, I think says something, and I'm not usually that partisan, but that was just wrong. There's no other excuse for that. So I know a lot of people have been after us for a long time. The campaign for 15 and the campaign for fairness was something that let me be the first to apologize that I wasn't listening to you when you first came here. I was listening to you, maybe not agreeing with you, maybe not understanding you, but the more we listened to people during the Changing Workplaces Review, when we traveled the province of Ontario and asked people what conditions they were living in, what had to change to make their life better, it became very, very clear that although we had a great way of keeping up with the minimum wage, of pegging it to the rate of inflation, we had simply started at much too low a level. And what we're saying, and I think I can't imagine there's any Ontario that wouldn't agree, that if you're working, as I said, those 35 and 40 hours a week, that you shouldn't be earning a living wage. It's just that simple. There's a basic decency to it. And I went back when the advisors were working with us, Mike Mitchell and John Murray were traveling the province, They uncovered all sorts of documents, all sorts of research documents, and going back to the days when conservatives were truly progressive conservatives, you would see progressive conservatives talking about a tradition of decency in Ontario workplaces. All parties agreed with that. I don't know what happened to that, but certainly I'm hoping that Bill 148 today, as a result of the support of my colleagues and thankfully the third party, is going to set Ontario on a different track than it's been for the past few years. That it really is, I can't think of a better name for an average, ordinary, working Ontarian. I call him the little guy, and people criticize me for that. I can't think of a better word. But this is a good day for the little people in Ontario. The guys that get out of bed, put on a pair of pants, run off to work, drop the kid off at the child care center on the way, put in the 8 or 10 hours a day, come home, just want to spend a little bit of time with their family, just want to buy groceries, want to buy shoes, want to play, all the basics. This is a really good day for those people, and we did it. So thank you. And as I said, it really couldn't have been done without each and every one of you. I don't want to single anybody out, but where's Dina, Ladd, and Murray? Okay.
I'm filming now.
I don't think you think we would do it.
No, I do.
Okay, well, because my sense is that we went a little bit further than people thought we might go in this exercise. When we started off, and you know who I owe that to, is to Premier Kathleen Wynne. It would have been so easy for the Premier to say, well, go slow on this, Kevin. Go through the motions. Go out there, talk to people, but just bring me back something that'll kind of... No, this was leadership. There's something wrong out there. We need to correct it. And it simply is I just want you to contrast that type of leadership with what you saw during the vote today. Sure. This is a very clear message to the people of Ontario. We've got your backs. We think we did the right thing here. Our economic recovery is, the prosperity that accompanies that is something that's going to continue, but everybody's going to be a part of this. Thank you.
Sure.